Hi everyone, my name is Arwen. For my senior project, I chose to explore theater as a form of activism. I wrote, directed, and designed a one-act play called Strike, Spark, Ignite. Strike, Spark, Ignite follows four characters who have found themselves outside a burning house, at a loss for how to help. These characters grapple with feelings of frustration and powerlessness and eventually find their way to hope. Voting as Fire Extinguisher by Kyle Tranmere. When the haunted house catches fire, a moment of indecision. The house was, after all, built on bones and blood and bad intentions. Everyone who enters the house feels that overwhelming dread, the evil that perhaps only fire can purge. It's tempting to just let it burn. And then I remember, there are children inside. Those are the words this whole project began with. Voting as Fire Extinguisher is part of a longer poem called To Throw a Wrench in the Blood Machine, which talks about voting using several different metaphors. I saved the poem Voting as Fire Extinguisher about 2 years ago and stumbled upon it one night last summer when I was searching for ideas. I immediately knew that I wanted to turn it into a piece of theater that would convey the importance of voting, not for the sake of the house, but for the sake of the people inside of it. I think the reason why I was so drawn to this poem is because it aims to find the humanity in all the noise and chaos we call politics. I wanted to transform it into a piece that talks about politics not in terms of systems and parties, but in terms of people, trying to figure out how we can best take care of one another. I wanted more of us to come to understand politics in this way and to see that inaction is an active choice that has consequences. I wanted us to feel inspired to make better choices for our children. And I wanted us to understand that our voices carry much more meaning than we think. Whoa, I skipped a slide. That's okay. While much of that still rings true today, I think a lot of my early passion for this project was fueled by frustration and impatience. With everything from my right to marry the person I love, to my safety in school, to my healthcare and autonomy, all on the chopping block every 4 years, I am often angry when others don't appear to share the same sense of urgency I feel when I think about politics. I always thought matters of voting and advocating for change to be as simple as, if they wanted to, they would, which is why I went into this project thinking that my goal was to persuade the world to care. But the more I listened to people's stories and reasons for disengaging with politics, the more I realized that lack of voter turnout is almost never about apathy. Through conversations, articles, journals, and interviews, stories of Americans who feel drowned out or not listened to, I came to understand that we feel disconnected from our political system for very real reasons. The reasons for low participation are part of our lived experiences. And while some of this is due to the fact that our political system was specifically designed to be inaccessible with the intention of excluding women and people of color, much of it cannot be solved with new laws or policy changes. Even if voting were the easiest and most accessible thing in the world, turnout would not be any higher if we didn't see ourselves represented or believed our votes were worthless. This is the feeling that lies in the center of Strike, Spark, Ignite. How can we look the world in the eyes and still find the courage to hope, to believe that we can be seen and heard, that our voices make a difference, and that we have the power to create change. I believe that change is not always one more voice shouting from the rooftops. There is a time and place for that, of course, but change is also defined by how it appears on the everyday. I believe that change is making people feel seen and heard. It's conversation, it's listening, it's empowerment. It's moving forward with both understanding and accountability. That, above all else, is what my senior project aims to create. With my ideas and inspiration secured, I moved into writing. I have loved performing my entire life, but playwriting was very new to me at the start of this process. The last time I had attempted to write a play was when I was 9 years old and had just discovered the Word app on my mom's iPad. I wrote 2 scenes of a musical about food. It's deeply, deeply terrible. My point being that playwriting was a side of theater making that I was almost entirely inexperienced in. And not only was I trying to learn how to do something new, that something was going to be put on stage in front of hundreds of people in just a few short months. This was a very vulnerable position, the result of which was that I could not stand to let my writing be bad. I felt as though I didn't have time to mess around with anything short of what would be good enough to perform on stage. I was terrified of exploring and experimenting. Even once I started writing, I restricted myself. I have always had a habit of editing my writing as I go. This works just fine for shorter academic writing or for something with a clearly understood course, but for something like a play, it is entirely unsustainable. I ended up a lot like this guy. I found myself writing in circles, constantly moving back to change words and make small adjustments, trying to shape it into something I liked. The problem, however, is I wasn't learning anything new about my characters. My story was vague. It wasn't growing. I needed to allow myself to write the parts of the story I did not understand yet. After some much-needed advice from my mom, I started writing again, this time with the goal of creating an imperfect but complete first draft. And don't get me wrong, it was bad. It was bad for a long time. One draft had zombies involved. Even I don't know exactly what was up with that version. But I was trying things, which meant I was learning. I had a direction to move in. Creating work I wasn't proud of definitely made me doubt myself at times, and there were many moments when I felt like I was never going to create something I was happy with. But I would take that feeling over the safe, non-specific writing I had been stuck with before. I've now come to believe that every single outline, rough draft, and garbled note to myself served a purpose. Even the most embarrassing early drafts reappeared in the most unexpected ways. One of the most satisfying moments of this entire process came when I realized that one of the very first scenes I wrote, and had since deleted, actually fit perfectly in a different part of the play. This kind of thing happened over and over again. I kept on returning to earlier drafts to extract lines and phrases that I liked. I soon realized that without all those imperfect stages, Strike, Spark, Ignite would not exist at all. Looking back, I see this play sort of like a person growing up, with all the hilarious, confusing, and occasionally cringe-worthy moments that shape who we become. Even though I look back on my childhood fashion choices with some embarrassment, I also understand that the lessons I learned in that time of my life are essential to the person I am today. And the same is true with art, because somewhere along the way, the bad becomes good. The uncertainty becomes clarity. And someday, you can look back on it all with newfound perspective and finally understand that art, like all the rest of us, needs an awkward phase. Another huge takeaway from this part of the process is the importance of rest. I have a habit of prioritizing my work above all else, and I often forget to slow down and take care of myself and my health first. I remember one week that was particularly difficult. I had been sick for nearly a month. I was overexerting my voice and my body at long rehearsals for another show and working on my script in what little downtime I found. Looking back, I see that I was asking so much of myself, but at the time, I was terrified I wasn't doing enough. My mind felt sluggish and slow and stripped of inspiration. It felt like I couldn't produce anything even worth reading, let alone performing on stage. My confidence in myself and my work and ability plummeted. I met with my advisor, Miss Wellington, that week and told her I was scared I wouldn't be able to finish. What she said to me after changed everything. Go home, rest, let your body heal, and then take this thing back. Do it for the right reasons. Let yourself enjoy it again, she said. Those words have stuck with me for the last few months, and I know they will for the rest of my life. Recognizing that I need rest in moments of frustration is nearly impossible for me, which is why hearing it from someone else meant so much to me in that moment. I was able to let go of all of the guilt and disappointment I had been feeling for the last month. And suddenly, I felt lighter than I had in weeks. I followed her advice. I went home that weekend and slept. I woke up late and with no expectations for the days ahead. I let myself have fun. I got better. I finished out my performances with so much joy and love in my heart. And then, on the following Monday, the impossible happened. I completed the first draft of my script, and what's more, it felt easy. Since that day, I've come to understand that resting, giving grace, and having fun are among the most productive things I can do for myself, and that finding ways to enjoy the simple work of creating art, removed from the stress of deadlines or whether or not it will be good enough, is absolutely essential to maintaining my energy and my will to keep working. I am also learning to meet myself where I am on any given day and allow myself to rest and recover when I need to. Okay, I sort of skimmed past this part to make my point, but I completed my first draft. This was where the fun part really began for me. I spent the next couple weeks editing and getting feedback from my incredible advisors, family, and friends. One thing about me is that I absolutely love the editing process. I revised over and over again, and the piece got stronger every day. These revisions finally transformed Strike, Spark, Ignite into the script I had imagined. The next step was to bring it to life on stage. With my script complete, I turned my attention to casting, which means finding actors to play the 4 characters. One of my biggest fears moving into this part of the process was being unable to find actors. I soon realized that I had no reason to worry. I sent out a casting call to all of my theater connections around the city. The response was unbelievable. By the next morning, over a dozen people had reached out to express their interest and support. To say I was thrilled would be an understatement. I was jumping up and down at 7 a.m. in the hotel bathroom, thrilled. A few days after I sent out my casting call, I hosted a table read to hear the dialogue out loud to help me make more edits. I invited my friends and a few teachers, not with the intention that any of them would be part of the final production. I was very mistaken. I absolutely fell in love with Miss Von Orthal's Diane. Her instincts for timing and inflections were perfect for the character. She effortlessly captured Diane's kindness and sense of humor. Not an hour after the reading, I approached her and asked if she wanted to take on the role in the real play. She said yes. A couple days later, I met with Sophia. She worked at Steppenwolf Theater with me and was one of the people who reached out to me online about being part of the project. They say, when you know, and this was absolutely true for Sophia. I think she was about 20 seconds into reading for Ellie when I knew she was the one. She exuded such beautiful and authentic optimism and belief in others, which is key to Ellie's character. I offered her the part right then and there. Our entire Zoom meeting took 7 minutes. Over the next couple weeks, I heard a couple amazing people read for Ziamara, but none of them quite had the fire and strength I had envisioned for the character. On the way home from hearing one such audition, I realized that the person I had been looking for had been right in front of me. Looking back, I feel like Jocelyn was always meant to be Ziamara because so much of my writing for the character was based on real conversations I had with her. She was my inspiration in so many ways, so it only felt right that she would be the one to bring this character to life on stage. I FaceTimed her as soon as I got home. She was just as excited as I was. At this time, I was still searching for an actor to play Blake. I told one of my theater teachers about the show and the role I was looking to fill. Her response was, quote, "I know a guy." That night, she put me in touch with Will, another one of her students. We met that weekend. He was fantastic. He was so passionate about the message of the play and had the perfect balance of Blake's stubbornness and care in his reading. And with that, the show was fully cast. People who run marathons say there comes a moment in the race when you know you're going to finish. For some, this moment comes the second they set foot on the track, or even before. For others, it doesn't come until they take their last step over the finish line. This was that moment for me. And not only was I certain that this play would be everything I had hoped for, I knew these actors would transform it into something I never could have dreamed of. Our rehearsals together were by far the most rewarding moments of this entire project. I truly could not have asked for a more dedicated and talented cast. Together, we managed to put this show together in only 5 rehearsals. Our first rehearsal was a reading on Zoom. The cast didn't know each other before this play, so we took some time to get to know each other, talk about what books and shows we were loving, and start to connect as a group. We then read through the script together. The next rehearsal was for blocking, which means planning and learning the movement of a play. Putting the show on its feet in the theater was an absolute blast. I lost my place on the page. Hold up. Putting the show on its feet in the theater and watching the actors perform it in person was an absolute blast. We also played games, ate snacks, and had a little photo shoot on the stage. The remaining rehearsals were for rehearsing the show and working trouble spots. Watching the show come to life during those weeks was so surreal. Being surrounded by artists who were all equally excited to put this show out into the world was gratifying and inspiring beyond words. The bravery, passion, imagination, and joy these actors brought to their characters and to the rehearsal room was absolutely beautiful. During this same time, I was also working on design elements, the logo art, costumes, sounds, set, and lighting. Fun fact, Strike, Spark, Ignite did not have a title until January. It was actually the need for logo, promotional art, and an invitation to the show that finally forced me to name the piece. I actually came up with the show's subtitle first, which then inspired the main title. Strike, spark, ignite. The fire inside us will send our walls crashing down or light our way to somewhere new. I liked the idea that it is within our power to stop, spread, or transform the fire into something new and beautiful. Here is the logo art for Strike, Spark, Ignite, created with help from my amazing mom. I drew the match digitally using Procreate, and then my mom helped me add the words on Adobe Illustrator. I created 4 costume boards on Pinterest for each of the 4 characters. These boards were my visions for the character's costume and aesthetics. I tried to encapsulate an overall feel rather than specific clothing items. I shared my design ideas with the cast and let them pull costumes from their own wardrobes. I really wanted the actors to decide how they think their characters would present themselves. Here you can see the design suggestions I gave them and the costumes they pulled from home. In addition to finding sound effects, I also created 2 sound montages to illustrate the characters' worlds at the beginning of the play compared to the end. The beginning is chaotic, loud, and violent. The end is hopeful. These montages were made from audio, pulled from news reports, protests, speeches, and historical footage. I also incorporated the song "We Didn't Start the Fire" by Billy Joel. Making the montages was pretty straightforward. I pulled audio from different places online, converted the files using the Cloud Convert website, which I spent way too much time on, and layered all the audio together in GarageBand. The huge design project was, of course, the set, which you have seen outside in the art installation. My family and I built the entire set in our backyard, starting with nothing but this model of the frame. My vision for the set was a frame of a boarded-up house covered in newspapers, photos, posters, and flames. We created the frame with 1x4s and attached it together with nuts and bolts. We had to spread the process out over several days because the January weather was not doing us any favors. We also ran into some trouble with stability. Houses have 4 walls for a reason, y'all. Trying to build one with 2 was very tricky. We ended up attaching a couple of trusses and a triangular support to keep the walls from leaning, which worked great. The finished frame looked like this. Next, we had to bring the frame into the theater. We rented a U-Haul, loaded up the pieces, and brought them here where we reassembled them on stage. After we got the set into the space, we moved into decorating. We printed dozens of newspapers, photos, and documents to tell a story of American history and voting. We pulled protest signs and advertisements of votes for women's sash and American flags. We made cardboard cutouts of the White House, the Capitol, and the Statue of Liberty. We even added a couple photos of tiny me in Washington, D.C. We also added a framed copy of the poem "Voting as Fire Extinguisher." We stapled the netting onto the back of the frame and began attaching the papers. Covering the walls was pretty fun. It was like a giant collage. This is what the mostly covered walls looked like. The last part of the set that needed to be made was the fire. I made each of the flames by hand. I shaped the outlines with wire and then covered the wire in red, orange, and yellow cellophane. Mr. Estep, if you're curious why I didn't read the end of the Bhagavad Gita, it's because I was making cellophane fire on my kitchen floor at 11 p.m. I hope that clears everything up. This is what the finished set looked like. I'm so proud of this work of art, and I am so grateful to my family for helping put it together. The last design element was lighting. I had ideas for lights written into the script all the way back to the earliest drafts. Each character in the play is represented by a different color, and the colors blend and merge as the show progresses. There is also a light cue to represent the breaking of the fourth wall, when the characters on stage see the audience for the first time. I worked with Michael McCarthy to design and program the lights. I was so happy with the lights. They made the show look so polished and complete, like the show I had been imagining since the summer. Incorporating all of the design elements during tech rehearsals was so fun. I had so much fun watching the show come together in tech. On our final day of rehearsal, we had the incredible Barry Baskin from Time Stops Photography come to take pictures. All of the onstage photos you've seen so far are her work, as are all of these. This brings me to the moment you've all been waiting for, the final stage of the project, the performance. I don't think any words can do these incredible actors' performance justice. I really wanted to play you some sections from the show, but unfortunately the recording and the auditorium sound system do not agree, and every time we tried to play it, all the actors sounded like Darth Vader. So, I would really encourage those of you who weren't able to come to the show to check out my art installation. There you will find a QR code that will take you to a full video. You can also search either my name or the title Strike, Spark, Ignite on YouTube. The sound should be totally fine through a phone or computer. My script is also displayed with my art installation for anyone interested in reading it. Also at my art installation is a page of resources, instructions for registering to vote, organizations dedicated to getting out the vote, and more. I want to leave you all with one more story. About 2 months ago, my dad and I started building my set. We had a model that we planned to build from, but it soon became clear that some of the proportions would be problematic later. Eventually, we made the decision to scrap my original dimensions for the set and build the whole thing as we went. In a moment of exasperation and frustration, I commented that almost no part of my project had gone according to plan. My dad replied, "Well, that's what's supposed to happen. Plans change. Besides, if you had built that thing according to your original plan, you would have hated it, right? So it's good that we're doing it this way." He was right. And the more I look back on this process and compare it to what I thought it would be like, the more I see so. I spent hours brainstorming lists of topics and deliberating with my parents and advisors, but in the end, I got my idea for my senior project on my mom's friend's Instagram post. I planned time to write at the library, free of distractions, but if I had to make a chart of all the places I did the most writing, it would probably be at least 20% middle of nowhere, West Virginia, 15% my bathroom floor, and 10% the hallway outside the Devonshire Cultural Center. I made a detailed scale model of my set, only to throw it out and build the whole thing intuitively. Much like the characters in the play, I started out with feelings of fear and frustration and found my way to hope and confidence. Almost nothing about this process has been what I expected or once considered ideal, and yet I wouldn't have it any other way. I understand now that my dozens of timelines changed, outlines altered, ideas rejected, lines scrapped, scenes rewritten, and plans canceled were not failures. They were necessary adjustments to create something that I was truly happy with and proud of. Realizing this has shown me the importance of tackling changes and setbacks as they come, and trusting that even though my path may not be linear, I am still on my way and I will still get there. To the juniors that are about to start their projects, I really hope you remember this. Your process will likely look very different from your friends, and that's okay. Don't hold yourself back. Explore, experiment, follow the path that feels right in your heart, work hard, fail over and over again, and I promise you, you will create something you are proud of. And even if you can't see it in the moment, every challenge is bringing you closer to where you want to be. Focus on the next step in front of you and trust that you are exactly where you need to be. You are all capable of incredible things, and I cannot wait to see what you do next year. Thanks. Now, I know you are all anxious to get out of those seats that definitely don't make your butt hurt, but before you do, I have some thank yous. First, I want to thank Kyle Tranmeyer for the poem that inspired this whole project, and to Rose Brock for sharing it with me. I want to thank Cynthia, Will, Sophia, and Jocelyn, the incredible team of actors that brought this show to life. I want to thank Michael, who is the outstanding light technician, sound and light technician for Strike Sparking Night. Yeah. I want to thank my senior project advisor, Ms. Wellington, for all of her generous help and support. I want to thank my writing advisor, Mr. Estep, for helping with my journal. I want to thank Barry for capturing the show so beautifully. I want to thank Janae for making the delicious cookies for the reception, which we are all huge fans of. I want to thank everyone who has inspired and supported this project, my class, my friends, my teachers, my class sponsors, my Aunt Renee, and everyone who came to see the show. I want to thank Ursula for being the best friend, life partner, and endless source of love and inspiration I could ask for. And lastly, I want to thank my parents for all their help and support, the hours they put in to make this project a reality, and for always being there for me. Theater truly does take a village, and I'm so lucky to be surrounded by such kind, smart, passionate, and dedicated people. I love you all so much. Thank you.
Well, this is only appropriate.
Great job, Ari. You should be so proud.
Thank you.
I was wondering if you could talk more about how you involved the voters' apathy and oppression in the play, like through the characters and stuff.
Yes. So in my early research for this project, I learned a whole lot about voter suppression. And that was something I sort of wanted to incorporate in the play to sort of help complete this picture and find empathy. So that is definitely something that two of the characters in particular are grappling with, whether it's just accessibility of, well, the closest polling place is like 30 minutes in traffic, or has a line and I don't have time off work, things like that, and really bringing those things to the surface and having conversations about that. And also having the characters arrive at sort of this realization that the only way to make voting more accessible is to do it anyways, and to get out there and vote for people who are trying to make it more accessible instead of less, and talking about voting even in communities where it's not really talked about. So, yeah.
So I was wondering, there were a couple things, but like, if I would obviously vote for you for president, and what do you think would be the first thing you would do if you were the president that you feel would help to do the most in our climate right now?
I got bad news. I do not want to run for president, but
I'm not asking you to run for president, but I'm wondering if you've thought about that. Like, what is something that you feel would do us the most good in this country?
Whew.
You don't have to have an answer.
Give me 3 hours and come back to you. I think there's so much.
Yeah.
I can get back to you if you really want to know.
my other thing, quickly, and it may be a dumb question because obviously, I mean, you said so much to us and so much good advice, and this play, everything seems like it's an output of where you come from. But when you feel that level, like that hopelessness or that feeling like, oh, what could I do? Is there somewhere you go, the first thing you say to yourself? Is there something you do right away to help you move through that feeling?
Yes, absolutely. I think a lot of my support and my sort of fire and energy really does come from my mom. So I would go to her, and I also think back, in 2016, after the presidential election, well, even before then, I remember being so excited to have a woman for president. And my best friend and I, we had a sleepover, and we made snacks, and we were all like, yes, this is it, women can do everything. And I just remember being so crushed after that election, and I think I go back to that place a lot, and it's just sort of this idea of doing it for that little 10-year-old that wanted a woman for president.
Amazing job. This whole process was very admirable. I was wondering, did you ever consider acting in the play yourself?
I did not. I had a little brief moment of panic that was what if I can't find people and I have to be in it? But that was 2 seconds in the grand scheme of things. And these actors are incredible, and there was never really a moment where I would change it. And also, it's very hard to direct a show you're in. So there was also this question, if I'm in it, then who directs it? So yeah, no, not really.
Can I just add on to that, to Bailey's question? What did you learn about acting and actors from being the director?
Check your email. No, seriously. When you're an actor, you don't really understand oh, my director emailed me 2 days ago, I can probably answer tomorrow. No. We are clutching our computers, when are we gonna schedule this? When am I gonna hear back? So yes, that was definitely my takeaway, is the importance of being on time, of responding quickly, and really doing the work in a timely manner, because it makes our jobs as directors so much easier and so much more fun.
Wonderful job. Wonderful,
Hi.
Great. You spoke about this poem being an inspiration to you, and I'm just wondering if there have been plays or playwrights that have also had an impact on you, either by their writing style or their messages in some way, pushed you in this direction.
Yeah, I think What the Constitution Means to Me and Row were 2 plays that I saw that sort of showed me political theater as a concept. There was also this book that one of my co-directors gifted me. It was called Theater of the Oppressed, and it's about political theater and the history theater has in making an impact on the world and society and our government. And all of those things were really inspiring to me as far as like creating work that speaks to people in this way. I also, when I was like in the trenches of the writing process, I went to go see Sanctuary City at Steppenwolf, and there was this sort of style. The play jumps through time, and it's sort of little pieces of dialogue that all layer together. And I was at this point where 3 of the characters had a monologue all separately, and I wanted them to come together in some way. And I sort of realized, oh, that's it. That's how I do it. And I took little pieces of their stories and layered them together and had people speaking at the same time for experiences that they shared. And that sort of like style was like immensely helpful. It like dug me out of the hole I had put myself in. Yes.
Like, do you have a favorite play or a favorite playwriter?
Ooh. I think I'm mostly a musical theater person, like by training, so I have been to a lot of musicals. I think my favorite show has got to be Hadestown. It's like a blend of Greek myths. It's fantastic. There's like a live band on stage. Even my dad loved it. It was phenomenal, so yes.
Arwen, what do you think makes theater particularly suited, as opposed to film or another entertainment medium? What makes theater so particularly suited to delivering a call to action?
Yeah. In my opinion, there's just something so special about being in a room with people and hearing them speak, breathing the same air as them, that just tangible feeling that you can't get anywhere else. And to use the film example, film is also phenomenal, but you are still in your own world. But with theater, you come together, you're in a room full of people all sharing this story at once, and you're in the moment not just with the other audience members, but also with the actors. And I think there's something just so powerful about that.
Hi.
Where are we?
Here. Hello.
Oh, hi.
Hi. First of all, loved your presentation. Loved your play. What was I going to say? Right. So there are midterm elections. There's a presidential election, and we elect people for our city, for our county, for our state, our aldermen. So how do you think that when we go to vote and we see all those names on the ballot, how do you think that the lay person who's not politically involved can determine for themselves who they should vote and who is most in line with their beliefs?
Great question. I think for someone who doesn't want to, do all the research, like spend hours in front of a computer trying to figure out like who is saying the right things, I think turning to your community is a great way, and particularly, I said this at the play in the Q&A, turning to the people who are most impacted. Turn to the women in your lives, the people of color, the immigrants, the people whose lives hang in the balance, and follow them where they go. Follow them as they fight for their rights, for their, can't think of another word, but yes.
So, Arwen, I got a question. So, are you going to take this play further than Waldorf? Because honestly, when I saw this play, I gotta admit, it was nothing short than phenomenal.
Thank you so much. I have had a few people whisper, there have been whispers about maybe potentially publishing it in the future. That is something that I want to do. As far as doing more like physical productions of it, I'm not sure.
I think your project was really effective, and I applaud you.
Thank you.
I wonder if you know the history of the school 50 years ago. some of the very early teachers and founders. One was a member of the White Rose resistance group in Germany. They were just students in college, and they were so threatening the Nazis that they were rounded up and some of them were killed. But she wasn't, luckily, and she loved Eurythmy and performed it till she was in her 60s here in Chicago. Started the Esperanza School. Trouda Page was her name. And then two of the two families, early founders of the school, one family walked across the bridge in Selma with John Lewis for voting rights, and the other defended the Chicago 7. So you're building on all of that, and I'm just really happy.
Thank you so much. That's like really fascinating history. Thank you for bringing that to my attention.
Any other? All right. Arwen, fantastic job. Thank you so much.